SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Midday SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this Hump Day. Welcome back. Hope everything worked out. No, you had a little plumbing problem or something yesterday.
Oh, yeah,
right?
that was a Monday night I would not like to relive again.
Oh,
because I got home after work to find a puddle in the floor of the bathroom, and I'm thinking, well, that's too big for Porch Cat to have made. Where'd that come from? Put a towel down, had to clean that up, came back up here to work another show, went back home, and it's a bigger puddle.
Oh, man.
Well, something is awry, and as I'm standing there, I hear a bubbling sound, and then through the hole where the anchor screw is on the left side of the toilet, there's like a little artesian fountain-looking thing going on. And it proceeded to do that off and on all night long until about 10 o'clock yesterday morning. So, yeah, I spent the night in the bathroom with my little shop vac and every towel I own, including, well, plus some floaties, those little pool noodles with little makeshift dams to keep the water in the bathroom. And, yeah, I'm sure my neighbors appreciated the little shop vac running off and on all night, but that was rough.
Yeah, it's nothing more painful than dealing with that sort of stuff.
It did finally get me to turn the heat on, though. I hadn't had the heater on this entire time. This is the first time I turned the heater on was because I'm sitting there with my feet covered in really cold water.
Okay.
And just like, oh, yeah, I'm starting to shiver. I need to turn the heater on.
Well, I think it was warranted. It was pretty darn cold. I think that's the coldest it's been this fall, I guess. I can't go looking back to earlier in the year because January and February typically, and March can be cold months in Mississippi. But well, I'm glad you got all that worked out. Glad to have you back in today. We had, of course, elections yesterday across the Magnolia State. Turnout, as expected, unfortunately, fairly light. But I guess the big races, big as in just higher up the political structure, 2 Senate districts, districts 26 and 28. Good story on our website, SuperTalk Mississippi, that about those particular races. It turns out that Kamisha Mumford won the runoff election for Senate District 24. And, District 26, Justin Pope won the runoff for Senate District 24. So 2 districts had runoff contests. That's because those seats were vacated, 24 and 26, previously held by Democrats, and they will remain held by Democrats. Justin Pope and Kamisha Mumford prevailed Senate Districts 24 and 26, respectively. So the District 24, that's LaFleur, Panola, and Tallahatchie counties. That seat previously held by retiring David Jordan, 3 decades down at the Capitol. And then 26, of course, was vacated by now Mayor of Jackson, John Horn, a state senator for many years representing that district. That includes Jackson, Ridgeland, and Edwards, also Bolton. So it's Hinds and Madison counties. Happens to be my Senate district. I'm right on the line. The house to the north of me in a different Senate district. I'm the last one there. I think the northernmost point at that particular area. So, and then we had several other local races across the state as well. We talked about it yesterday. Right now we had Secretary of State Michael Watson in, of course. There were some school board elections and supervisor elections. One in particular of interest in Rankin County, supervisor. Phil Scoggin versus Darrell Palmer. Scoggin ended up winning, I think the last count I saw, by 20 votes. Extremely close. Last night it was 6. And I think once everything got in, it was 20 was the latest delta between the candidates that I saw. 20. That's close. That's why you got to get out and vote. Of course, turnout, unfortunately, pretty light. Expected. You know, we talked about that. You don't have statewide races. You don't have a president on the ballot. Don't have U.S. senator. Don't have congressional candidates on the ballot. It's just hard to get people out. Unfortunately, just is.
I think you could add name recognition to that, too.
Yeah, probably so.
Because there just aren't that many people plugged in politically to recognize some of the names of these candidates.
Yeah, that's probably true.
So if you just see a whole bunch of signs with names you don't recognize, can't put a face with a name, can't in an instant because you're driving by the sign think, oh, yeah, that's this person for this race, then you really don't have any motivation to go to the polls.
A large number of people, I found out, even in districts where races were being held, didn't know they were. You know, so they didn't get out. And I guess you could say that, you know, when you have more people on the ballot, you find out about it. You hear about it more because they're all spending money and they're out campaigning and so forth. But when that's not happening, you just don't know about it. Interesting. We also had, I think, a coroner's race or two, if I'm not mistaken. But by the way, the state Senate District 26, Kamisha Mumford over Letitia Johnson, that was 55.9% to 44.1%. So in that Senate district, looks like, just doing the quick math, 6,800 votes, just under 6,800. Not a whole lot. And then the Hinds County coroner, the county there, that's interesting. More ballots cast in the county, in the county coroner race than in the state Senate district race. Also, Justice Court. This was a one that got a lot of attention here locally in Rankin County. Adam Woods over Tamara Bowie. It was a big day for the Republicans in Mississippi. Yeah, so now I'm looking at the final tally for this Rankin County supervisor race. 8 votes, it shows, now separated the two candidates, Phil Scoggin and Darrell Palmer, 929 to 921. Wow, Lincoln County Circuit Clerk. This is another one that some of the statewide elected officials weighed in on. Very close. Christy Shepard over Jackie Jones Bates, 2,098 to 2,061. So 37 votes separating those two candidates. That's interesting. Well, And then the other big one, in Tennessee, the entire nation had its eyes on that one. And the Republican Van Epps prevailed over the nutcase Bain, known as the AOC of Tennessee, by the way.
Oddly enough, she won Nashville.
Yeah.
The city she claimed to hate.
Exactly right. It's just mind-boggling. Also, is on the record of saying she doesn't like country music, right, as well. But good to see that in that particular race, this was, again, one that was a high-profile special election. The seat vacated by Republican Mark Green, and the Republican Matt Van Epps, looks like, has defeated Democrat Afton Bain by about 9 percentage points. Now, the polls had the race a lot closer, like some had it within 2 percentage points. But we need to point out, 9 percentage points, that is less than half of what the president and Mark Green carried the district by a short year ago. We got Henry Barber on at 12:20 to discuss all this. At 10:35, Casey Dixon, Director of Marketing for Mississippi Blood Services. This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
And, of course, this race in Tennessee, a bunch of money poured into that deal because it is thought to be a harbinger, an indicator, a benchmark, all the various words you can use, nouns you could use to describe it, a barometer for the upcoming midterms. Now, I will say, and we'll get Henry's thoughts on this as well at 12:20, it does bother that even though the Republican won here, that the margin by which Republican Matt Van Epps did defeat Democrat Afton Bain, 9 points is a little too close for comfort, in my view, in ruby red Tennessee and in a district, like we said, that the president and the current, now prior seat holder, Mark Green, held, where they won by 20 and 24 points respectively in that same district. So, you know, the Democrats did win, but they're probably taking some degree of satisfaction in the fact that they cut the margin. Now, look, it's a year away. A lot of stuff can happen between now and then, but I'd like to see the Republicans step it up. And here's how and where I think they should. The Democrats kind of own this affordability narrative term. They're the ones that dreamed it up and are pushing it, and I do think it resonates with a lot of people. And the president, I thought Rhino got a little defensive, but went on the offense, right? Which is, I think, a good strategy when the other side is just really out there just shaking the trees as they are about, well, the president really hadn't made things more affordable. And to some extent, he's right in that I think our expectations need to be tempered. And, you know, I think the COVID thing has got us all thinking in the context of pre- and post-COVID. It's like a huge just kind of demarcation line, if you will. And I think a lot of people, and it's right, see the whole COVID ordeal as an anomaly, which it was. We never see anything like that in our lives. as far in our lives. Now, it happened before, but this massive shutdown and all the crazy crap that went on. And, I mean, heck, you and I sat in this studio every day. It was something else crazier to talk about. Not so much here, but certainly across the country. There was so much double standard crap, as you like to say. If there weren't for double standards, the Democrats would have none. But so many of the Democrat governors with the old rules for thee and not for me crap, going to get quaffed and eating out and enjoying the recreational facilities and all that kind of stuff. But you can't do that, right? That just aggravated people. And then I think the biggest thing perhaps out of it that really set off a firestorm and a trend was parents discovering what was being taught to their kids because it was in their living rooms on the virtual education tools. Wait, my third grader's learning gender crap, right? I mean, that was happening like crazy. And I think that's when people started to wake up and say, this is nuts. And then you had old Randy Weidgardner and all the teachers' unions. We ain't going back to the classroom until you give us trillions of dollars for HVAC and all kinds of other nonsense that they were demanding before they go back to the classroom, which basically told me you're just lazy and don't give a crap about the kids at the end of the day. You just want to push and get whatever you want. And so I think Americans' eyes were opened, and perhaps the first evidence of that politically was when Glenn Youngkin won Virginia as governor and ran on that because, as you recall, Loudoun County and Arlington counties were kind of ground zero for all the crazy stuff happening in public schools when they were having these school board meetings. And you just couldn't believe what was going on. And parents wanted to know, and them essentially not letting them speak and address the elected school board members. Oh, you're getting out of line. But I'm reading out of the book that's in the library in the elementary school. That's inappropriate. But this is what third graders are reading, you idiots. I mean, that was happening like crazy. And Youngkin comes along, and it was not just gender
it
ideology.
It especially came to a head in Loudoun County when there was a sexual assault.
That's right.
That they tried to cover up.
Totally.
And then started arresting the parents at the school board meeting for daring to bring it up.
Totally right. And they were, as you recall, one of the many school districts that were promoting this content, this message to children, foisting it on them that you're responsible. Remember, it's in the wake of the George Floyd crazy stuff. You're responsible for everything that's ever happened bad that white people did simply because you're white, because of the color of your skin. You share the same skin color as slave owners of 1860. Therefore, you're responsible for it. Telling this to kids who are, of course, saying, what the heck are you talking about? Inappropriate content. And no one should be held responsible for prior indiscretions simply because they happen to be members of the same race. So Youngkin, day one, you remember in Virginia, issued an executive order essentially banning that from being taught in the schools. So that was a wake-up call. But it's all to just kind of illustrate how the combination of COVID and the George Floyd stuff and the cancel culture and everything that ensued from that, it's kind of got us thinking sort of the pre-that period and the post-that period. All that to say, with respect to affordability, we ain't going back to 2020 pricing. But if we did, then you'd have to go back to 2020 wages as well. You can't have prices go up and companies respond and the market respond by increasing wages so that people have more money to deal with, to manage inflation, which, by the way, means their costs go up, these companies, and they got to pass that on somehow. We're not going back to that. What we got to hope for, and I do believe this will happen, is that the policies that are being implemented, such as extension of the tax cuts and some sweeteners on top of that for tips and overtime, and increasing the standard deduction for seniors, and companies that are doing well, and we are seeing an increase in wages. So real wages, which are wages adjusted for inflation, have increased since the president was in office. For Joe Biden's, you remember this, Ron, the first 3 years, it was the opposite. We had negative real wages. In other words, inflation was outpacing the amount of money you take home. It was only in his last year that for that year, there was a net positive real wages. But for the whole 4 years, it was a net negative. And it's crazy how, I know you're shocked at this, the Democrats would never talk about the prior 3. Hey, real wages are up under Joe Biden, wink, wink, for the last year. Now, honestly, most of them probably didn't know, don't understand that. I'd like to think that there was some nefarious plot there, an attempt to hide the truth. They don't know. I just really don't. You think Joe Biden had a clue with it? He couldn't even tell you how to calculate real wages. But under this president, it is true. Real wages up this year. And so, but we're still making progress there. If inflation stays in check and wages continue to increase, then the increase in real wages adjusted for inflation will also trend upward, and folks will have more money to spend. So you got that. And, of course, the president yesterday and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent talking about going into next year with the Trump tax cuts on the books and these new provisions for tips and overtime. And the other big thing that's, I guess I haven't mentioned is don't forget the state and local tax deduction. There was a cap on it until the One Big Beautiful Bill Act passed, $10,000 a year. Now it goes to $40,000. Probably doesn't affect a lot of people in Mississippi, but across the nation, as you know, it affects a lot of people because property taxes in other states are outrageous. So it's not unusual for your average household in, say, New York and Illinois and California and Connecticut, New Jersey. It's not unusual for them to have a $30,000 a year house tax bill. It's insane. And so only being able to deduct $10,000 of that was a problem in that it made their income taxes higher. Now they'll get some relief there up to $40,000. Now, higher income households, of course, will benefit from that, but it's still a fair amount in those states, and that will be a difference maker going into the midterms, I think. Well, we're taking a break. Casey Dixon, Director of Marketing and Public Relations, Mississippi Blood Services, is next.
From theseabrook.com.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We welcome now Casey Dixon, Director of Marketing and Public Relations for Mississippi Blood Services. Hey, Casey.
How are you doing this morning?
Doing fantastic. So we wanted you to come on and give the folks an update of the status of the inventory, the blood supplies there at Mississippi Blood Services.
Yeah, November we had a really good return as far as all of the community stepping up and helping us during the month, especially during Thanksgiving. That's usually a time when the blood supply comes a little short. So we had a lot of donors in the area step up and help us keep that inventory at a consistent level for the patients in the hospitals.
Gotcha. So I know I ask this question all the time when you guys are on, but it's kind of rhetorical, but you need all types, right? It's not any specific type, or can you share with us maybe where there's some particularly acute shortages?
Right now, like you said, all types are always needed. The most important blood type is the one that's not available. So in order to have all of that available, we need the blood types coming in, whether it is O, A, B, AB, whatever the case, to keep that inventory level at a consistency. O's and B's are primarily the ones that we desperately need. So if you are one of those types and you are eligible, yes, please come in and donate.
All right, so tell the folks how they can donate, where Mississippi Blood Services has locations.
Yeah, we have a couple of locations. So in the state of Mississippi, you can come to Lakeland at our Flowood Collection Center. Or if you're in Oxford or in Cleveland areas, we have collection centers there. But also across the state, we like to host anywhere from 5 to 10 mobile unit community drives that we go out into the community and make it a little more convenient for the donors to donate.
All right, and then the process itself, describe that to the folks.
The process is fairly simple. I mean, as long as you've had a good, healthy meal before you come and donate, and usually we like to have that within an hour to 2 hours of donating, you're good and hydrated. You'll come in, you'll do a small screening, you'll go through a small questionnaire just to make sure any type of personal conditions that you're currently going through do not interfere with the donation process. Once that is done, they'll help determine if your blood type, the gift that you could give, could either be a whole blood unit or a platelet process. So they'll help decide which one works best for you. And the process, once you sit down, it could go anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes up to an hour and a half, depending on the procedure that you have been able to donate.
What situations or conditions, Casey, would preclude someone from donating?
A lot of it is medical. Some of the medications that they're on, there's usually an iron restriction or an iron deficiency. So those are the two primary concerns. Okay.
Yeah, so they actually do a little test on that, right, just to determine that you meet the standards there before you're allowed to actually donate.
That's correct. That's part of that screening process. Yes.
So about how long does the process take from the time you walk in the door to the time you settle down, have a snack, and you're on your way?
It could go anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. It just kind of depends on how the flow is. And like I said, if you were able to get that healthy meal and you're hydrated, it helps get the blood flowing a lot smoother. So that process can move the procedure along faster.
Gotcha. Painless, though, as well, right? Just a little stick?
Of course. Just a little stick. As long as you can handle that little stick, everything else is smooth sailing.
Yeah. And you get a little snack at the end of it. Used to be Nutter Butter cookies, right? Last time I did it.
They're still there. That's one of the favorites. We make sure that one has a steady inventory stock.
So, and the folks are very nice and very grateful as well, and you literally are saving lives. We would be remiss if we didn't mention with my partner Rhino here that J.T. Williamson, longtime host of this show, the J.T. Williamson Show, would often talk about, what it's like being on the other side of the bag, as he called it, when he was battling cancer, and how critical that was to that period for him.
That's correct. My husband is also one of those other side of the bag recipients. So it is very critical. It brings it kind of more to a personal connection. Everyone around these days knows someone that is going through some type of a medical situation, whether it is a procedure that just needs to take place or if they're battling some type of disease or cancer. And having the blood supply readily available for blood transfusions for those individuals to help clot the blood and make the process a lot faster and easier for them to adapt to during that situation in their personal life. It makes the individual feel better knowing that they have helped them. Each unit that you provide could potentially help 3 different people. And we all know the circle of life it's the circle of 3. It's everybody knows somebody and everybody else knows someone else. Yeah. So being able to have that immediate connection and making that personal connection helps with the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are the hours of the locations, Casey?
So if you're going to our Flowood location on Lakeland as well as Oxford and Cleveland, they are open until right at 5:30. Cleveland and Oxford, they are closed on Sundays and Mondays, but the location in Flowood is open, so they have the ability to come. Saturdays, we're usually open 7:30 to 2:30, but outside of that, if that timetable does not match up with what a donor is capable of doing, they can check our website at msblood.com and see where one of those mobile units are that may be closer to them during a lunchtime period that they can schedule an appointment or either just walk in.
And Casey, the blood that's donated at Mississippi Blood Services centers, how does it get distributed?
We provide blood to approximately 50 or more hospitals across the state of Mississippi. Our primary concern is to make sure that the patients of Mississippi have the blood that they need. As a one of the forgive me, I'm losing my mind right at this very moment. But being able to provide the blood outside of Mississippi for other situations that are in dire need, such as the fires in California or down in New Orleans when they had their situations. We like to step in and help where we can, but we do take care of this the patients here first.
And I assume these other states reciprocate when Mississippi has an emergency sort of need like that?
Of course, we're all members of an organization that allows, it's kind of a rotating schedule. That way, if a particular center in a particular state is going through a crisis situation and cannot get the blood as fast as they need to help the patients that are going through the trauma, they rotate around and allow the other community blood centers to support.
I see. And we're certainly, unfortunately, no stranger to that here in Mississippi, those sorts of situations, emergency situations.
You are correct. That is absolutely right.
Yeah. All right. So what else do you want the folks to know?
Well, here in Mississippi, like I said, we are one of the primary providers for the blood to the community. We like to make sure that all of the donations here are processed properly. Throughout the month of December, we are collecting toys for Tots. So if they have the ability to drop off an unwrapped gift, we are providing those as well. We are offering various incentives throughout the month. So currently they can go ahead and pay attention to what our website and as well as our social media has in order to find out if any of those particular incentives tie up with someone with their eligibility dates.
I got you. Okay. Well, I know you guys do good work, and is there a time of year, Casey, are the holidays, or is there a special need during the holidays relative to other times of year? I mean, I know you need blood all year round, but is there any sort of peak and valley situation? Is there a seasonal aspect to it?
It is. And a lot of times when you're collecting blood or looking at the inventory, it has a low time period during the summer as well as during the holidays. And if you think about it, that's usually the time frames that people are traveling. They're out doing vacation things or they're doing family things. So it takes away from that immediate top priority to go and donate. But we do have a lot of loyal donors that still come in on a regular basis. So we are very thankful for those that do. But during those holiday seasons, yes, we'd like to make sure that we keep that inventory consistent.
Gotcha. Casey Dixon, Director of Marketing and Public Relations for Mississippi Blood Services, has been our guest. Get out there and donate blood, folks. Appreciate it, Casey. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me. Donate blood today, please.
Absolutely. We're coming right back, folks, in the Element Wealth studio.
It's so awesome! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show!
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. Don't forget to go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income growth and guarantees. On the C Spire text line, Mo says, Gerard, after all, who knows how many of millions of dollars over the years next year you will be able to fly without a real ID for $45. I sure hope the terrorists are broke. Flyers without a compliant ID will have to pay TSA $45 next year. I saw that. In fact, there's an article at SuperTalk.fm about that. But it's pretty simple, though, is it not, to get a real ID? Nothing to it. The gold star on your license, right? That's the solution. Brandon from Cleveland. Glad y'all will be in Cleveland tomorrow. Love the show. Depending on how busy I am, in town truck tomorrow. Plan on coming by. Please do, Brandon. Come by and say hello. We're going to be at the Cotton House Hotel inside this year. It's going to be a little cold, a little brisk, and so we're bringing the show inside. Should be fun. 50 Nights of Lights. Haven't seen the lineup yet, but I know Alex always has a great lineup for us when we're up there, and we'll be promoting that. Cleveland. The home of Delta State University, of course, and right there in the heart of the Delta. And that Main Street downtown is really beautiful, isn't it? It's
especially when they got all the light fixtures.
Isn't it great? Yeah, agree. The big trees, really cool. Looking forward to it. Let's see. Gas is $2.28 for $2.28 where I live. That's a lot more affordable. Yeah, agree. Gas has certainly come down, but nationwide, it's really not down substantially from the same period last year. And it depends on where you live, but overall, you got some states that have had the most significant decrease, about 15%. But on average, down by a penny across the nation, because in some states it's actually gone up because of some crazy taxes and nutty things like that. But, yeah, overall, largely due to...
They said 238.
What's that?
Is that what the texture, 238?
228.
228.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it quite that low.
That might be lower than the taxes California charges per gallon.
Probably so. When you layer on all the state and local and all the other dumb taxes they put out there, I wouldn't doubt it. It's like $4.65 a gallon in California still. But average price, $3.08 in 25 versus the same roughly in 24. Average across the 50 states. Again, it differs depending on your particular state. Just looking at a chart going back to 11/24 all the way through 10/25. Of course, not too long ago, the average across the country back in April, about $3.16. That's the highest price average nationwide in 2025. It's largely driven by this decrease we've seen. Saudi Arabia pumping out a lot more oil. There is a decline in global demand, including in this country when we travel less than we do in the summer months. And then it's also the summer blend. We're not, right, Rhino, that's a little more expensive, and we're not required to stick to the summer blend this time of year, and I think that's a less expensive formula. And the production in the country is up, although not a lot. We just have to be honest about that. It was 13.4 million barrels a day this time last year. It's about 13.7 today, which is certainly up, and it's more than we've ever produced. And it's the most any country has ever produced. I saw that statistic the other day on a daily basis. But on the other side of the equation is natural gas. And I was a little surprised to find out that natural gas is actually up about $1.10 on it's measured, of course, in terms of million British thermal units, MMBTU, and that price right now November 25, average in the nation $3.32 per MMBTU. Significant rally throughout the year over last year. So, I think most people have also seen their electricity bills have steadily increased. Not dramatically, but they steadily have. So, overall, though, I think folks still are looking for some additional relief on the affordability front. Someone on the C Spire text line also said Mississippi's minimum wage is completely disrespectful and needs to change. We're up against a break right now because it's top of the hour. Fox News and SuperTalk News is next. I will respond to that assertion on the other side of the break. Stay with us. It's Middays. Of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Hump Day.
All right, so don't forget Henry Barber, GOP strategist and delegate to the RNC representing the great state of Mississippi. He joins Middays at 12:20 to give us his thoughts on the elections yesterday in Mississippi, the runoff elections, and, of course, the big race up in Tennessee, what he thinks that means for the coming midterms, and just overall thoughts on the political landscape. He's a great analyst of all things politics. We're glad to have him on, 12:20. So back to this statement we got here, Rhino, on the C Spire text line. Mississippi's minimum wage is completely disrespectful and needs to change. You know, I've talked about this before on the show. This minimum wage narrative is one of the most misunderstood and politicized talking point of all. Because you've heard the Democrats call for a federal minimum wage increase that would cause states that observe and currently have in place the federal minimum wage, which is $7.25, such as the state of Mississippi. They're calling for an increase in that, not having a clue what that would mean economically. And there's this perception, it's actually a misconception, that there are just gazillions of households out there that are living off the federal minimum wage. The minimum wage, period. Because many states, half or so, I think, maybe even more than half, have implemented law for a minimum wage that's higher than the federal minimum wage in their states. But nonetheless, people are shocked to find out. And by the way, if you think I make this up, I have this memorized, but just for the heck of it, I went to it today to make sure it hasn't changed. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, the official keeper of this data. The percentage of workers in this country that make the minimum wage, not just the federal minimum wage, the minimum wage, 1.1 freaking percent. 1.1. The highest ever as a percentage of the workforce in this country, 1979, 13%. Also happens to be the year, interestingly enough, and I don't think there's any correlation, where manufacturing represented the highest percentage of overall GDP. It's come down substantially since then. And that's not because manufacturing is so much shrunk in this country as much as it is we just invented a whole bunch of other industries and those have grown substantially in this country. But this idea that all these people are out there making the minimum wage is just horse hockey. It's not true. And if you look at it, the demographics, I know you've looked at this before, Rhino, it's mostly teenagers to 20-somethings that are not working as breadwinners of the household. The Democrats want you to believe they can't take care of, they don't have a living wage. That's horse hockey. They're not. They're not earning the minimum wage. Unbelievable. What I think we should do, so that the texter says, I promise I'm not trying to argue, but if only 1.1% are on it, then why would it hurt economically? Seriously? We have to go through that speech of what the cause and effect of when you raise. Are you paying attention to California? When they just raised the minimum to like $30 an hour for fast food workers. And folks are shutting down fast food restaurants, getting the heck out of there. And they're installing robots to take the place of people. This is happening today, by the way. It's in future. And they're also raising the prices. You think you're going for a fast food hamburger meal, and you get the bill, it's $30, right? For the standard combo burger fried drink meal. That's what happens. That's why it's bad. You're just chasing your tail. You're not producing more. So you're paying more, but you're not producing more. That's what they don't get. That's inflationary. If you pay more, but you're producing more, that's not. Paying more, not producing more? No, that's inflationary. That's what causes it. That's why dropping money out of helicopters is inflationary. You didn't produce anything for it. Well, in the case of Mississippi and the minimum wage or the federal minimum wage, I have an even more radical idea that's probably not going to be popular with this person. You've heard me say this. Let's eliminate the minimum wage. Let the market figure it out. You want to stem the tide of illegal workers taking American jobs? Get rid of the minimum wage. That's my belief, because many of them work for below the minimum wage under the table. All cash. Not paying taxes, not contributing. They're paying sales taxes because they go buy stuff. I promise, a lot of that's going on. Get rid of the minimum wage and get the people off the couch, American citizens, and go work and let the market compete for them. And I believe the wages would end up being higher than the minimum wage because we wouldn't have all the illegals coming into the country working for less than the minimum wage. I think that they would be in competition. So I'm not suggesting it's the panacea. It doesn't solve all those problems, but I just don't see that as as huge a problem as it's being made out to be because it's such a tiny fraction of the population. But to those businesses who do have minimum wage workers, you talk about increasing the minimum wage, well, all they're going to do is have to increase prices to pass it on to us, and that doesn't achieve anything. It just, like I said, you're just chasing your tail in that respect. So let's see here. He says, I'm not asking for $30. I'm saying someone making minimum has to rely on the government anyway, so you're right. No, the demographics prove that most of them are not breadwinners of households. They're just not. They're not saying there aren't any. There are a few. But if you look at how that breaks down by demographics and mainly looking at the age range, it's young folks, really young folks. Heck, a lot of the people listening, including me, worked as a teenager for minimum wage doing various jobs. That wasn't unusual. And you knew that, well, this isn't permanent. I'm just trying to make a little extra money while I'm trying to get myself to a position where I can get a better paying job for my longer-term professional career. I don't see what's the problem with that. It serves society well in that respect. It's not like they're trying to operate a household, and that's what the Democrats want you to believe. I just don't see that as a big problem. James from Petal says we should fix inflation. We shouldn't have inflation every year. If we fix it, when federal minimum wage could increase by the same percentage of inflation. If we don't fix inflation, that second bit might actually hurt the economy. Yeah, inflation's just part of the natural cycle, and that's why economists for decades now have determined, right or wrong, that 2% is kind of a natural rate of inflation. And so when you start, again, as we discussed yesterday, when you start slipping into deflation, that's bad. That means things are tough, rough. Businesses are having to lower their prices to sell their goods and services. That means overall the economy's hurting. It means people aren't working because they can't afford things. Affordability is a function of having a job more than anything, and I think that's what the president is expressing, and he's right about that. Unemployment is low. People are working. There are some concerns about some of the layoffs we're seeing, and we did get a jobs report this morning that was negative. It was a loss of 30,000, expected 42,000 created. That's going in the wrong direction. I don't know if that's a trend. It's hard to tell at this point. But Wall Street certainly took note of that. And honestly, Wall Street sees it somewhat positive because it means the Fed is even more likely to cut rates because they feel headwinds on the economy. And remember, their mandate is stable pricing and maximum employment. So when they see layoffs occurring, they do scratch their head, and that is a key input. We'll get all the crazy rhetoric and the words that the investment community follows. But usually that's an impetus for lowering rates. So that'd be good. Let's see what else we got on there. Donald in Kokomo says, I don't know anyone that hires at minimum wage. I agree, Donald. I start new employees between 16 to 20. And you're right. There are. Most of them are temporary or part-time, honestly. Very few full-times. Those that are working on minimum wage and still dependent upon the government for their main income usually have a reason such as disability, and raising their minimum wage is not going to change their situation and take them off dependency. That's largely true. You do have a lot of that. The minimum wage would still put you at right at about 100% of the federal poverty level if you work full-time. Paula Meridian says gun prices are way down. I haven't checked that out this year, but I think there was an unusual spike, was there not, Rhino, that I can't remember the reason, but we're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
If you're feeling anxious,
Interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge news. Huge news. You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. So again, yesterday the president had a cabinet meeting. I think it's his 9th, if I'm not mistaken, cabinet meeting of this particular term, and he kind of railed against the narrative being promoted by the Democrats, and of course their media arm, which is all the crazy mainstream media, that the president is not addressing the affordability crisis. And he touted the state of the economy. He bashed the recent focus on affordability, calling it, quote, a Democrat scam and a fake narrative that the Democrats talk about. He says that he halted inflation, which is about 3%. That's the latest government reading. He said he's reduced some drug prices at 500 to 900%. That's actually not possible. That would mean that they would be paying you to take the drugs. He says it's a con job by the Democrats. He was asked about health care yesterday. Didn't really offer too much. In fact, he allowed Senate Majority Leader John Thune to answer that question from reporters. Thune said, quote, I don't think at this point we have a clear path forward. I don't think Democrats have a clear path forward. That's the truest thing I've heard come out of a member of Congress in a while. I don't either. I don't think they have a clear path. Just don't see it. And so neither party at this point is able to coalesce around a health care plan except the Democrats, who, of course, are pushing hard to extend the subsidies, the enhanced subsidies in the ACA exchanges. And that actually, just to be clear, only affects less than 2% of the people with insurance. There's 24 million people. There's 340 million in the country. 24 million get their coverage in the exchanges. There's about 210 million people that have some form of health, 310, some form of health insurance that could come in the form of commercial insurance or, of course, Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare and Medicaid currently sitting at about 120 million of the total 320 or so that have coverage. And the president, once again, doubled down, said, expect these tariff refund checks. He said, we're going to be giving back refunds out of the tariffs because we've taken in literally trillions of dollars, and we're going to be giving a nice dividend to the people in addition to reducing the debt. All due respect, Mr. President, the collection of tariffs thus far is under $300 billion. It's not nearly $1 trillion. And we're only going to be able to reduce debt if we eliminate the deficit. So this is something to think about.
And Costco is suing to refund tariffs.
I saw that. And I don't know where that's going to go, honestly. Of course, it's contingent on the Supreme Court's decision on whether or not the president's imposition of tariffs is within his scope of power. We shall see. I don't know what the outcome is going to be on that. I think Costco's wrong for kind of jumping the gun out there and suing at this point. I don't get it. But this is something to wrap your head around, folks. We're currently sitting, you probably know this, at $38 trillion of federal national debt. By this time next year, we probably are going to have a 4 handle in front of that figure. Probably going to be really close, if not at or just slightly north of the $40 trillion debt mark. $40 trillion. Now, the president yesterday also says he knows who's going to be the next Fed chairman. I think it's going to be National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett. Jerome Powell, of course, will come to an end of his term at the end of the year. I think he's going to be announcing as the president the next chairman here in the next week or so, 2 weeks. He once again lashed out at Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, called him incompetent and a real dope, while also reiterating his call for reducing interest rates. He kind of joked about speaking to Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, about taking the job, but he said the Treasury Secretary would prefer to stay where he is. I think that's a good move. I think Kevin Hassett would be a better choice for that role as the chairman of the Federal Reserve, and he would be a more dovish chairman, shall we say, meaning he's more likely to push for interest rate cuts and more moderate on interest rates than the current chairman, Jerome Powell. But these are all things that's going to affect your money, without a doubt. Let's see. Gerard, you need to have a serious sit-down at the White House. This is on the C Spire text line, of course, with Trump and the entire Congress to listen and educate all. Or have your own national weekly TV show to help educate the country? Look, I want to be clear. You know I'm a huge supporter of the president. Voted for him, was proud to cast a delegate vote for him as a delegate from my home state, the great state of Mississippi, and support his policies. I can't think of too many that I don't. I'm not a fan of tariff rebates because we don't have the money, honestly. We're not close to closing the deficit. We're not close to paying off the debt. And if that's what you're talking about, I agree. And, if the president should call me, I'd be happy to work with It's not that they don't have the ability to know. These are smart people. They know all this stuff. But somebody that I think the president respects should talk to him about this. And here's my fear, honestly, guys, is that as long as he continues to promote the narrative that everything is great, and, man, I get it. When you're in charge and it's your policies, you want people to thrive. I do believe that he has everybody's best interest at heart. I don't believe that about the Democrats, so you'll know. I think they have their own personal best interest at heart. End of story, period. And there's no doubt that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz would have been disastrous for this country. At a minimum, one of our biggest problems that is the cause of a lot of these affordability problems is the gazillions of freaking illegals that float across our border. And the president fixed that pronto quico just by saying, hey, guys, enforce the law. That's all it took. He didn't really do much beyond that. And
if you want to talk about affordability, one of the main keys to affordability is food prices. You don't think food prices are inflated by having 40-plus million people eat on your tax dime?
And not only that, let's be honest, that I think we put maybe too much stock in the government's ability to just flip switches and make prices change. That, I mean, heck, who could forget Joe Biden? Just go out there and change the pump price on gas. Just idiotic suggestions like that. Look, these are market dynamics. What the government does do, however, is it implements policies. It promulgates policies that are either friendly or they're hostile to markets. And the Democrats, generally speaking, are hostile because they don't think any company should make any money at the end of the day. They want to get in and have a seat at the board table there and control wages and prices. They made that very clear. Remember, that was Kamala's proposal. We're going to eliminate price gouging in the Kroger. What price gouging? It's a 2% business. Okay, the whole 2%, people are feeling much bigger squeezes than 2%, I can assure you. But the bottom line in the grocery business is 2%. Has been forever. So, but that's just their incompetence and just total lack of understanding of basic economics and unwillingness to even dig into those kinds of numbers. And why don't you go pull up Kroger's financial statements? You got an army of people around you. Couldn't you just ask them right now? Hey.
That was one problem Kamala had, and that was one main reason she looked so foolish, was because she had people preparing stuff for her to look over before she spoke publicly, and she never looked over it. She
just ain't smart. Yeah, doesn't want to invest the time. But you can't operate as in that role at that high a level without, you got to spend some time digesting, consuming information, not creating it, consuming it. You should be a consumer of information. And then work with your team to come up with a narrative to address those facts. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From theseabrook.com, Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
'Cause I'm as free as a bird now. And this bird you cannot change. Oh, and the bird you cannot change. And this bird you cannot change. Lord knows I can't change.
Welcome back, everyone. It's middays from the Element Wealth studio. So DJ in Summit said, he said 18 trillion tariff money came in 10 months. Can that be applied to debt? Man, if 18 trillion came in, that's 2.5 years of the entire federal budget. No, about 250 billion came in, DJ, just so you'll know. It wasn't, he said trillions and trillions, but it's not. It's not trillions and trillions. It could be over an extended period of time, but thus far it's not. And keep in mind, these are American companies that are paying these tariffs. So it's not like, as is often portrayed, that it's foreign countries that are paying these tariffs. They're not. They don't have any standing with the United States to pay tariffs. They all come from American companies when they import those goods. Now, most people have said they really can't tell that tariffs have been a factor in the increase in the price of goods and services that they purchase. However, there's also analysts out there that say, well, these companies, to get ahead of the tariffs, went out and stocked up and pre-bought and loaded up their inventory before the tariffs really kick in, that we really haven't seen the full effect of them yet. So I don't know. There's so many different...
I mean, there were some people predicting that you would have empty store shelves come Christmas time.
Yeah, that's not the case.
That's nowhere near the case.
No, but it is absolutely true that many of them did. I know I have friends that are in the import business that have said, yeah, we tried to get ahead of it, and we went and stocked up, but we know the next time we go to market and we purchase that we're going to bear some additional higher costs. Our suppliers have said that because of the tariffs. Now, their suppliers being importers of the goods that they buy from them, or they import them directly and they pay the tariff directly. So these are taxes that are being paid by American companies. It's not trillions. And I would keep this in mind, that the goal that the president articulated, and I support this, is let's domesticate as much of this manufacturing as we can. We're going to incentivize them to move their production to within the borders of the United States to avoid the tariffs when they ship that stuff back up from overseas. So if that happens, then the tariff revenue is going to fall because we're not importing. We're producing here, which would be the better scenario. But thus far, hadn't been a lot of that. I mean, the manufacturing sector, certainly from a job and CapEx perspective, still not just on fire. Most of the CapEx occurring in this country is related to artificial intelligence, by far. It just dwarfs everything else, and that's just this massive build-out that's going on right now. So, yeah, we can't get to a point where we can apply any of that tariff revenue to the debt until we no longer have a deficit. You could literally take income, just carve it out from tariffs and say, hey, look, go pay down on the principal. But think about your own personal household. If you did that, but you're still running a deficit in your household, you just got to go borrow more money to make up for the deficit because the deficit's higher. So not really, it's a shell game. You're moving money around. You're not really achieving anything from that. My concern is that the entire agenda gets put on ice if we don't maintain the House and the Senate. That's my concern. And so I'm hoping, and that we're going to have Henry Barber in here in about an hour to talk about that. I'm hoping that the Democrats, the Republicans are thinking about that. I do. I'm seeing reports that behind the scenes they know this is important to Americans, and they've got to address this. That starts with health care, of course, and the cost of health insurance. People are just getting shocked by what they're seeing out there, and they're looking for some solutions to that. And I certainly hope the Republicans put something forth pretty soon here to gain some confidence of the American voter that they're looking out for them in that respect. So, but that's kind of what's going on right now. Yeah, and I'm looking at that. I'm looking at that Costco case. I think that's getting out a little over their skis there. So there's also a retroactive tax break that's worth about $16 billion, which ain't a whole lot in a $7 trillion budget. And that's for depreciation this year for investments made before the bill went into effect. So just like we're talking about the prospect of refunds being boosted because the law went into effect mid-year, and that is not embedded in people's pay right now. They have to square up when they file their tax return of what that half year of exemption, it's not actually the exemption, deductibility of tip income and the premium portion of overtime and the increased SALT cap and all that stuff. Now, by the way, folks, you could talk to your I'm not trying to substitute for the advice you should get from your internal HR or your tax advisor, but even though tips and overtime are deductions, thus they're not exemptions and they won't be figured in to the withholdings from your employer, you could increase your exemptions even though you're a single, for example, and you're having your withholding calculated as a single, but that's not factoring in this deduction. You can increase your exemption or even increase the amount or decrease the amount, I should say, withheld by some specific dollar amount. Most payroll systems allow that to account for the deductibility of tips and overtime rather than waiting for a year to square that up on your tax return. I don't want the government using my money. I don't ever want a refund. That's just me. That's my position on that. So I always try to structure all of my what's it called? I can't remember anymore. The W-9, W-4. Well, I can't remember the document you fill out that where you declare your marital status for tax purposes and all that sort of stuff. One of those IRS forms. It's been a long time since I've done that, but it's when you're employed, when you go to work and you have to fill out one of those forms. You could change that. You have the option to change that with your HR department. And then you're responsible for squaring that up when you pay your taxes on your tax return. But I always wanted to structure mine so that I'm pretty close. I don't owe them anything, and they don't owe me anything. I don't want them using my money. I don't want big refunds. Now, some people like that. They look at it as kind of a savings mechanism, that they like that lump sum, if you will. That's fine. That's your prerogative. It's the way that works. But
you'd be better served if you just set it up with your HR to have money taken out and put into a savings account. Because
that's true.
Even if you're only getting 1%, that's 1% more than you're getting with Uncle Sam hanging on to it for you.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Because if you overpaid and they send you a refund, they don't send it with interest. But if you underpaid, you got to pay interest. And that's another issue that certainly self-employed people have to be concerned about if they're sending in quarterly estimates. There's some safe harbor rules about that. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but in general, you got to pay in a certain amount to, even though you don't know exactly what your tax bill is going to be as a self-employed person, to avoid penalties and interest for underpaying throughout the year. That's different than a person who's on a normal payroll that has their taxes withheld each pay period. So W-2 is what fill out. W-4 is what's on the C-SPAR tax. Yeah, the W-2, that's your report of wages and withholdings you get at the end of the year. I know about that one. I thought it was a W-4, the document, one-page document you complete as a new employee, again, that just declares your preferences.
That's the W-4.
Okay, I thought so, yeah. So,
according to IRS.gov,
there you go.
Completing the Form W-4 lets your employer know that they can withhold the correct federal income tax from your pay.
There you go. You put down your marital status, your dependents.
And they recommend consider completing a new Form W-4 each year.
100%. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen that recommended.
Yeah. It's just to adjust for any...
I've seen it recommended if you have a major change, like a marriage or a big move or something.
Well, or if you messed up. I mean, when you've declared your exemptions and all that kind of stuff. You're right, though. Certainly if you had a change, you have more dependents now, or you change your marital status. That's a no-brainer. But you could have had a situation where you just filled the form out wrong and you did your tax return and said, wait, I owe more than I thought, or they owe me more than I thought. I'm going to make an adjustment. But I guess the point I'm making here, Rhino, is that the tips and overtime is complicating this because this is an above-the-line deduction, meaning you don't have to meet the threshold for the standard deduction before you can deduct additional expenses. Which is way on up there now, like $14,000, I think, for an individual and $29,000 for a couple, if I'm not mistaken. So that's way on up there. This is above the line. Coming right back.
Poly Up of Mississippi. Covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio on the C Spire text line. Yeah, technically Powell's term, Jerome Powell, chairman of the Federal Reserve, ends May 15th. Right, but the president said he's going to name the replacement by the end of the year, if not the last couple of weeks. On the C Spire text line, I still believe newly elected members of Congress should take an economics class. Some members have no basic understanding. I don't think it would help, honestly. I hear you, and I'm not opposed to it. I just don't think that it's their strong suit, many of them. Some of them it is. You can just tell when they're talking that they're more proficient than others, more versant than others, I would say.
I think you would run into a constitutionality problem, too, if you had any consequences for them failing the class.
That's true. I don't think you could impose any consequences. They're duly elected.
They would just
blow it off.
Yeah.
That's sad to think about. Really is. So there's a question about percentage of population paid by government. I don't know that the percentage is, and I don't know what that is. I could tell you I could do the math real quick, but just keep this in mind when you look at the big budget items that include some sort of federal assistance. It's at the top of the list is Medicaid, and the Medicaid and CHIP, and also at the top of the list that's about $616 billion. Then you got health benefits for federal employees, certain retirees, treatment, assessment, prevention of health-related issues in the U.S. So that would be, for example, money that goes to, but that's not direct payments to people. I'm talking about the NIH, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, FDA, all that's kind of included in the umbrella of health, which is just under $1 trillion. But just to take Medicaid, it's the biggest program. It's federal. It's $616 billion is what that thing cost. And then you've got veterans benefits, which are about $350 billion. So, and there are numerous different aspects of that. And then there's a whole nother category, which would be people receiving money from the government, called income security. That's what it's called. It has been for decades. It's about $680 billion last I checked, income security. That'd be SNAP, for example, which is over $100 billion a year. The ACA. Some parts of that are included in that. The TANF program, which was a big subject here in Mississippi, the TANF, TANF stands for Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. That's like direct cash payments. There's certain federal retirement programs other than Social Security. And there's housing assistance. That's another big one that comes up. And then some people would lump the refundable tax credits into this deal. In other words, you file a tax return and you don't make enough money to owe any taxes, but you still qualify to get the IRS to send you money in the form of child tax credit, child care credit, the earned income tax credit. Especially now, by the way, I looked up the standard deduction for next year. It has gone up. I said like 14 and change and 29 for 25, but in 26, that goes to 16.1 and 32.2 for married couples filing joint, 16.1 for an individual. So so what that means is that a lot of people, once they do their tax return, they don't owe any money because they take this big standard deduction. That was a feature of the Trump tax cuts when the standard deduction was increased. But as you recall, the personal exemptions were removed. So the idea was, look, just have this one big whack off your income, your high level gross income before we start digging into what kind of taxes you owe. So interesting how all that's working out. We still have about half the country, household-wise, that don't pay any federal income taxes. Sits at about half the country. One of those years when everything was ratcheted up during COVID, it was 51%. I think it's down to like 49%, but it's still a lot. I believe you should have to take and pass a common sense test before you can even run for any type of office in this country, says CC in Senatobia. Happy to hear the governor stumping for school choice yesterday on Mornings with Richard Cross, says Ben from Madison. He made some great points about how education freedoms are a major part of the national GOP and state platform. Hopefully your prediction comes true and the president will weigh in on the issue once this session gets underway. I believe that is going to be the case, Ben. I really do. So there are going to be some detractors and opponents, shall we say, Rhino, in the Mississippi legislature that are going to be forced to walk the old plank there, as the saying goes. But I'm going to say again, I'd like to see on the national scene, the president and the GOP really start to talk more seriously about what we're going to do to address the cost of living, and certainly health care as well is a big part of that. Coming right back after the news.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays, live from the Element Wealth Studio on this Hump Day. Don't forget, tomorrow we're going to be in Cleveland, Mississippi for the annual 50 Nights of Lights, coming from you direct from the Cotton House there in downtown Cleveland. Looking forward to that. It's going to be a little rainy on the way up, but I should be fine. We're going to be inside in beautiful venue as well. Looking forward to being up there with my friends in the Delta. So on the C Spire text line, I canceled my Costco membership today and have spent my last dollar. Won't cross the threshold again. So I asked if that was because of tariffs. Said, yeah, if you don't want to pay tariffs, buy American. If you're going to buy something from overseas, you'll have to pay the tariffs. Yeah, the only problem with that is there's a lot of stuff that we don't make here. So you would have to forego lots of goods that we all consume here. Rest assured, you're consuming stuff that comes from overseas. It's impossible. You're using something.
It's not impossible. It's just not cost effective for most people.
You can't send that text without using materials that came from overseas. Impossible. Agree?
To a certain extent.
That text traversed infrastructure that has components in it that were manufactured overseas.
Right.
That's the point I'm making. That's the only point I'm making. So I get it. And look, I'm pro-American and buy American.
In the realm of things you buy on a regular basis, the vast majority of those you could purchase made in American items. It just would not be anywhere near the price point people are used to paying.
I agree with that. Totally agree. We're coin operated. I completely agree. But I get it. And let me just say, I fully respect anyone's ability to buy from wherever they want. I personally don't engage in that because I think back on my days in business, and man, if folks that align with my views were my only customers, I'd have been bankrupt. I just don't mix that. That's my policy, personal policy. But I respect you for whatever your personal policy is. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is, to the texter here, I get it. Costco's the first out of the gate, but rest assured, many other will follow. If the ruling comes back, I think they're a little premature and over their skis. I think they should have waited. And honestly, I don't think any lawsuits are going to be necessary. If the court comes back and says, hey, the president is not within his purview here to impose these tariffs, there is a lot of talk about requiring the federal government, you've seen that, to refund the monies that were collected. And they have a record because it's like paying taxes. Everybody that pays tariffs, I mean, there's a structured mechanism for that, a very formal structured mechanism. They're going to have to send them money back. That's what it appears at this case. I think Costco's wrong for suing at this point. I think they just should have waited to see what the court does. But look, they're a private business and they can do whatever they want, even if they make what I believe to be mistakes. Lord knows we've criticized lots of other companies for decisions they've made that we thought were poorly made decisions. But that's capitalism, private company. Something else going on that we should call to your attention, you've probably seen some news about this, is the SNAP program is under fire because the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, simply asked the states to provide information about the rolls and the payments that they've been making to SNAP recipients. And the Trump administration is now threatening to withhold SNAP management funds. So just so you'll know, they're not talking about withholding funds for the actual SNAP benefits, but the federal government does provide some money to the states. It's kind of jointly funded. The administration, this would be and I don't want to throw everybody under the bus here, but this would be it's not my problem people, right? Yep. So, but the federal government does cover some of that cost. And so they're not withholding, again, the money for the benefits, but they're threatening to withhold the money to the states that covers part of the administrative costs, which is a much smaller number than the actual benefits themselves, if they don't send this data in, because there are 28 states, by the way, that did send their data in, and when they sifted through that and filtered through that with various electronic tools, they found people dead that are on the rolls. They found something we've talked about numerous times on this program, folks enrolled in multiple states. So once again, this is 100% a function of antiquated IT systems. 100%. And it's amazing to me that in this day and age, with the sophisticated IT systems and capabilities we have in this thing called the Internet, where everything's connected, there was a time when, well, yeah, I'd like to know the people in Mississippi that are also enrolled in Alabama, but that would take like 6 months for Alabama to send me some media to do that. That's not the case anymore. You see, we got this thing called the Internet now. By the way, Internet, a network of networks. Alabama's network, Mississippi's network together. That's the basis of the Internet. That's the basic foundational structure. No excuse is the point I'm making. No excuse for this.
Well, the federal government's full of people that would consider that a series of tubes.
That's right. That's exactly right. So what happened is when the Department of Agriculture under Brooke Rollins received all this information from the 28 states that sent it, they scrubbed it again with various tools and said, yeah, you got some problems here. Hey, you other 22 states, cough up your data. But what I hope comes out of this are modernizing the IT systems to prevent this. It's pretty simple. So the not my problem people don't really have to make any critical decisions. The system does it for them. Maybe this is a job for artificial intelligence. You could pretty simply and easily, we've been doing system validation routines for 60 years, right? This is nothing new here. Oh, by the way, it says they're dead. You ain't getting any benefits. That's the old if-then decision tree, the Boolean logic and all that stuff. You know what I'm talking about.
That's like week one of any programming class, intro to programming.
It's amazing this is going on. And here's the other thing. States that sent their data, you'd have thought they'd have scrubbed it a little bit to just include, hey, here's all the data. By the way, we found some problems in our data, and we just want you to get on top of that and let you know, Madam Secretary, we found these problems, and we're going to fix them. They set them up there. And is that right? That's exactly what happened. Are you kidding me?
They're from the government. They don't understand the word accountability.
That's like turning in your work without reviewing it like one last time before I submit it because it's going to be graded? It's unbelievable to me. This is government at its finest here.
Modern version of that would be it's like turning in the work with the last paragraph being ChatGPT asking if you'd like to change something in the readout.
Or what you see also is the backwards semicolons and all that was generated, and that people will issue that as like official statements. Like, no, it's not. This just came from a generational tool. So one of the AI generational tools. What does it stand for? Predetermined, right? Is that? I'm trying to think of what. Oh shoot, I'll think of it in a minute. Predetermined generational transformer. Generational predetermined. I'm trying to think of what the GPT stands for. I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's something like that. What's
Chat generative pre-trained transformer?
I knew it was something like that. I said predetermined. Okay, pre-trained. That's right. It makes more sense because you literally do have to train it. But it's a $100 billion a year program, which is not chicken feed. But in the scheme of things, that's 1.4% of the federal budget, roughly. It's amazing. And look, this needs to be addressed big time. We should root out all the fraud, all the improper payments, all the scamming, all the folks that are signed up in multiple states. Absolutely, 100%.
That's part of the problem of the overburdensome federal government is just about any quote-unquote hot-button issue you hear politicians talking about, it impacts 1 or 2% of the population.
Totally right. And my point is,
politicians don't talk about anything that impacts half the population or most of the population.
That's the point I was about to make. I wish we'd see this amount of interest and attention and vigor behind bigger dollars, bigger issues. This is just kind of popular, right? But doesn't really make a lot of financial difference. Henry Barber on the other side of the break.
I'm here with David Baroni.
We interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go. This is huge news. Huge news. Huge. You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We welcome now Henry Barber. He's a GOP strategist and a Mississippi delegate to the RNC convention. Hey, Henry, good to see you, man. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Gerard. How are you today?
Doing great. So we had, let's start first with the elections, runoff elections yesterday across the state of Mississippi. Had a couple of key state Senate races. Any surprises for you there, Henry?
No, I think the race for John Horn's seat in North Jackson into Madison County and Canton, I thought was really interesting. It got heated between Kamisha Mumford and Letitia Johnson. And, there was serious money spent in this race. Letitia Johnson spent something like $350,000, which is a lot.
Yeah, for
a
state Senate
race. And Kamisha Mumford spent $160,000, which is a considerable amount as well. But Mumford won 56% to 44%. But it was interesting to me, in a runoff election, turnout is almost always going to be lower. And so, sort of strange things can happen. And Hinds County voters did a better job of turning out. They turned out at a rate of 74% of how they had voted on November 4. But in Madison County, only about 55% turned out, which is Mumford's hometown. She's a judge and attorney in Canton. But nevertheless, she still won because she carried Hinds County, which has got, the larger number of voters in this race. But interestingly, Kamisha was supported by Mike Espy, former congressman, former member of Bill Clinton's cabinet, attorney, the mayor of Ridgeland, the mayor of Clinton, while Letitia Johnson was supported by Benny Thompson. And so it's interesting that Benny didn't win in this race. And I should note, interestingly, Derek Johnson is Letitia's husband, and I'm sure you know Derek. He is the head of the NAACP. He was the head of the NAACP in Mississippi, and then I think in about 2017, he was for the whole country. And so you had some real power brokers involved in this race, and they spent between them about $500,000 fighting over who could go to the state Senate. I don't know.
and so, Henry, was that just for the runoff, or was that total?
That's total.
Okay,
that's total.
Still a lot though for a state Senate seat.
It is. It's a chunk of change for sure. And so, congratulations to Kamisha Mumford. I hope she does a great job at the Capitol, and I'm sure Letitia Johnson will be busy as an attorney in Jackson. We had two, talented candidates running for this, and then and up in Greenwood, we also had a race for David Jordan's seat. He retired, and that's LaFleur, Panola, and Tallahatchie County. And Justin Pope defeated Carisha Brown 54% to 46%. And then I guess I'll mention that the acting coroner in Hinds County, Jeremiah Howard, won with a strong 58% in his runoff. And as far as I know, those were sort of the races in Mississippi that were of note.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to try to see what campaigns do to generate turnout in the Jackson Senate race. Letitia Johnson kind of went after the issue of school choice and the fact that Mumford's children go to a private school, and sort of questioned her ability to be for public schools. And, it's fair enough. All's fair in a campaign. But apparently it did not work.
Right.
Mumford, pretty strong performance.
Henry, do you expect any major difference in philosophy in governing, serving as a member of the state Senate between Kamisha Mumford and former Senator John Horn?
I don't think so. I will say I don't know Kamisha Mumford or Letitia Johnson. I think I've met Letitia before with Derek, but I just feel like you had two candidates, both very capable, and neither afraid to kind of go to the mat and compete, which I admire. They both are Democrats. And
sure.
I'm a Republican. But, I don't think there will be a whole lot of difference. But we shall see how Mumford does. I know, a lot of important things happen at the state legislature. I think people put a lot more emphasis on the federal Congress, the U.S. Congress and Senate. But, Gerard, it's so hard to get things passed in D.C. that a lot of public policy really is happening at the state level.
Yeah.
All across the country.
No doubt.
So it's really important who we send to the state capitol. And we've got some good leadership in the Senate and the House. And it's really critical, the folks that we send to Jackson to represent us, and obviously the governor as well.
Henry, let's talk about this special election in Tennessee. The whole nation was focused on that. Matthew Van Epps and Afton Bain competing for that one, Republican versus a Democrat, respectively. I noted earlier on the program, Henry, that the margin there was 9 points or so, but that's a district that was won by the president and the prior office holder for that seat by 20 points, respectively. So,
20, yeah.
Were you concerned about they roughly halved it, more than halved it. So are you concerned about that for the midterms?
Yes, 100%.
Me too.
As a Republican, I think that race clearly is of concern. And let me just tell you, Afton Bain is a left winger. She calls herself a radical.
Right.
And so for Republican candidate who seemed to be a capable guy, to only win that race by 9 points in a race that we won by 22 in the presidential race, it should alarm Republicans. It should alarm the president's political team. A lot of money was spent there. They had big turnout. The turnout matched 2022, which is really impressive. The speaker was there on Monday to help generate turnout. And understandably, because the Democrats only need to flip 3 seats in the U.S. Congress and the House to take the speakership away and to totally change the second term or the second 2 years of President Trump's 4-year term. The dynamics will change dramatically if we lose the House. They'll set the agenda there. But Trump weighed in and they got the job done. So they accomplished that. But as a precursor to the midterms, it doesn't look good. And I think if you look at the races for governor in Virginia and New Jersey that we just finished, and there were a lot of Republicans talking about, we got a real chance, particularly in New Jersey. We weren't close in Virginia or New Jersey. And then meanwhile, a socialist Democrat gets elected, Mamdani, in New York City. And then on top of that, Prop 50 out in California dealing with redistricting passed overwhelmingly. All of that is an indication that we're in historical norms, because typically in a midterm with, I'll say a first-term president, this is not exactly a first-term president, but it's a rough year for whoever holds the White House. And so 2026 looking like it could be trouble for Republicans. And I got some ideas of why, I think, but part of it is just historic.
We got a break. If you can hang on, we can keep talking on the other side. You good?
Yes, sir.
All right.
All day.
Great. We got Henry Barber, GOP strategist. We're coming right back.
From the Seabrook.com. Gerard Gibert. Going beyond the headlines. Breaking down the stories that matter to Mississippi. Middays with Gerard on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Love is but a song we sing, feels the way we die.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We've got Henry Barber, GOP strategist, on the line. So, Henry, before we went to break there, you said you had some ideas. You thought let me back up. You said you thought that the election in Tennessee was a bit of a harbinger for what could be a tough midterms for Republicans. I agree with you, by the way. I just think that cutting that margin in a short year by more than half indicates that maybe there's a problem brewing. And then the other elections you mentioned in Virginia and New Jersey that didn't go well for Republicans there. But you said something before we went to break. You offered that perhaps you have some ideas of, and I know this is what you do, you're a strategist. Anything you want to share, Henry, about how maybe Republicans can shape their messaging going into the midterm year?
Yeah. Well, I don't think there are too many people that would disagree that politics, whether on the right or the left, has become something of performance art. It's a lot more about social media, getting on television, the soundbite, the more divisive, the better. It's not focused on public policy and getting results. And look, I spent, most of my career, being involved in running campaigns. And campaigns aren't about public policy. They're about winning. That's the only thing they're about. But when you get elected, you got a different job. And whether you're a Republican or whether you're a Democrat, you need to be focused on how do we get the best results for the people?
Sure.
Whether you're at the state capitol, whether you're at the White House or in Congress, wherever you are. And so I mentioned that, and I think that, that's an issue for both parties. And I'd be a liar if I didn't admit that, I think President Trump is kind of the leader in the clubhouse as far as being able, to perform. And look, there are things that I give him great credit for that he has dealt with, the border and crime. I was pleased what he did with the Epstein files, and let's have transparency on that. Yeah, I think what he did with Israel and Gaza was very impressive.
Yeah.
And I think he's been in a lot of ways very effective, but painfully sometimes just frustrating because he just can't seem to ever just let something go. And I think that one of the issues, Gerard, that everybody's kind of talked about is affordability, the cost of living. How do people make ends meet, and how's the economy going? And I think we being Republicans, we hammered President Biden on inflation. And it's part of the reason that we won the White House back in 24. But I don't know that we have done the best job of staying focused on that issue And I just think it is a practical reality for voters. How are they able to make ends meet? And, the government shutdown on top of that, wasn't a winning issue for either side.
Right.
Chuck Schumer from New York thought the longer it went, boy, the Democrats were doing better and better with every day. And it's like, dude, you need to wake up. Everybody's pissed. They're pissed at you. They're pissed at the president. They're pissed at Mike Johnson. They want the government to operate.
Sure.
And so I just think fundamentally, Gerard, we need to be focused on results. And, Haley likes to say policy is good politics. And I think when you're elected, yes, that's what you need to focus on. How do you get results? And I think we need to avoid the performance art. There are plenty of Tucker Carlsons out there who are not elected officials. And if he wants to be a performer, have at it. And he can have, whatever nutcase he wants on his show. I'm not going to watch. But for our elected officials, I want them to be, focused on results. And I think, I look to our governor, and I just think I'm proud of Tate for the economic development focus. He's focused on it like a laser beam.
Yeah.
And it's paying off. And I think some of our other neighboring states are having some issues that are making them a little less attractive politically. And so I think that's a great opportunity for Mississippi. And I think Tate and I think the legislature have all done, and MDA done a good job of putting us in the best position. So when these companies are thinking about these billion-dollar projects, they're knocking on our door. They want to come see what's going on. And another plus here is, we don't sort of have all the not in my backyard as much as all these other states seem to have, Gerard.
I agree. So, Henry, one of the things we've been talking about the very subject all day, as a matter of fact, so perfect timing. One of the things that we discuss and get your take on this is it feels like that in the president's comments and even from Republican leadership, that maybe they're not acknowledging that things are really as they are, especially with respect to this affordability issue. That's something that touches everybody. You can't. We can get into some of the social issues, Henry, and it gets crazy, but that doesn't really directly affect. It's just people object to it. This is something that affects everybody.
100%. Yeah, and it's just. It's unfortunate. Hey, we called Biden on it, and Biden, was trying to spin that there was no inflation or that it was all great.
Yeah.
When people are looking at their grocery bill, and it's like, this is crazy what they're
right.
paying for eggs, and now I think we got a little bit of the same disease, and politicians, elected officials need to understand. You got to talk about the good stuff and the hard things.
Sure. Yes.
And sometimes you may not have all the answers, but people will give you credit if you're straight with them. And I think we need to be that way.
I agree.
As a party, and the voters will be a whole lot happier. Folks are more that way.
Well, I recall.
But it does. I have to.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say
there was one quote I saw in the Wall Street Journal earlier today from the quote Kremlin spokesman, and you talk about spin, and he's saying we want peace, and it's just like talk about laughable.
Right.
They invaded Ukraine 3 years ago, and they're threatening Europe now. Sort of, hey, we got some nuclear weapons. We're sending some to Belarus, and just so they get a little bit closer to y'all. Anyway, I just thought that was quite a quote coming out of the Kremlin.
While the bombs are dropping, right? We want peace. Exactly.
Yeah. They just can't kill enough Ukrainians. And sadly, they're killing Russian soldiers just as fast.
That's exactly right. I recall, Henry, after Obama was elected the first time, 2008, took office, and remember one of the first actions was the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, I think is what it's called, if I'm not mistaken, the Recovery Plan, which today looks like petty cash at $900 billion. But you know, people expected and felt like we'd see immediate results from that. And I remember Joe Biden touring the country, screaming at people, the recovery's working. It's working. No, we don't feel that, Mr. Vice President. You have to be careful with that, do you not, Henry, in politics?
100%. You made me think back to a Bob Dole quote back in 1996, and he's taking on Bill Clinton, and I said something to the effect of, I can't believe I'm losing to this guy. And, hey, give Dole credit. He said what he thought. Anyway, it's funny. But look, 26 is coming in a hurry, and Republicans better get focused on things that the voters care about. And pocketbook is number one.
Always good to talk to you, Henry Barber, GOP strategist and delegate to the RNC convention. Good to see you, my friend. Thanks for calling in.
All right, Gerard. Take care.
Take care, man. We're coming right back with the final segment on Middays from the Element Wealth Studio.
Shake your leg and do the mess around. I declare, do the mess around. Yeah, do the mess around. Everybody's doing the mess around.
The one body. Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Appreciating Henry Barber coming on the program and sharing his perspective and his insights. He's got an awful lot of experience in all things political, running political campaigns, serving as a strategist, advising, committee chairman, and so forth. So he's a good one. We appreciate him coming on. So this SNAP program is something that's gotten a lot of attention because during the shutdown, the Democrats they're starving people and all that sort of stuff. We're wailing and gnashing teeth and clutching pearls about that. And then, of course, we just shared with you that the Secretary of Agriculture has requested that states send in all their SNAP rolls. So it's crazy to me we have to send them in, though, Rhino, if you think about it. Part of that's because I think the federal government, the Trump administration specifically, is skeptical that the states are properly administering their programs.
No.
I know that. And then I guess the other thing is, again, it comes down to just antiquated systems that desperately need modernization and full integration with the other states to make sure they don't double up on the benefits. And this idea that we're paying benefits to dead people. Now, all we know is that they're dead people signed up. We don't know if benefits that the USDA, to be clear, hasn't released that. Yes, that's still under investigation.
Well, the main reason why the systems haven't been updated.
Why is that?
Because there's not anyone in the industry of providing those services that is corrupt and connected enough for them to, quote-unquote, feel the need.
That's true. That's sad. Because you do that in the private sector, you fail. I mean, the market punishes you if your systems don't function. That's the primary interface we as consumers have these days. Even with brick-and-mortar retailers, we often end up interfacing with them through some electronic means. And not to mention the massive online economy that has evolved in this country, which is a good thing because there are a lot of people who've made substantial businesses out of just being a supplier to the online economy. And Amazon's created the first, really, you could argue, to create such a platform for that purpose. It creates massive value to third-party sellers. So it's just a shame to me, I guess is one way to put it. Kind of sad that, we can't just make sure we're not paying dead people here. This is pretty fundamental. Or that people aren't enrolled in multiple states. And while it's a problem in the SNAP program, it's a big problem in Medicaid because it's third-party insurance companies that administer the Medicaid programs in most states, and they get paid by the state based on the number that are enrolled. And they don't bother to check the other states. Hey, maybe you're already enrolled in another state. So what happens is, let's say a case here where we are, someone is enrolled in Mississippi, and then they move to Alabama, and they go enroll in Alabama. Talking about Medicaid. Well, the state of Alabama and the state of Mississippi pay the operator, the managed care operator. Organization, I think is what the O actually stands for, but they're the third party in the state of Mississippi. It's Centene that run the program. They get paid per head. And then they deal with the insurance claims aspect of it. But both states are paying for the same person is the point. And it may not even be nefarious on the part of the person because they don't get money for it. The only way that money goes out the door from the Medicaid program is if they go to the doctor and a claim is filed. They don't send you a check for Medicaid. And then the other problem, of course, in the ACA we've learned with the enhanced subsidies is when they created that zero premium strata, that range, that group, the deadgum insurance companies, this has been shown, are going out and signing people up that don't even know they're signing up. And they don't complain about it because they're not paying anything. You'd complain if you got signed up and all of a sudden you got a bill. Wait, I didn't sign up for that. But when you're not getting a bill, that's like half the people signed up never file a dang claim. You've seen this statistic. I'm not exaggerating, Emma.
No.
That's crazy. And so these are, once again, these are IT problems. I can't say it enough. And, I had a belief in my IT career that at the heart of every business problem was an information handling question. And we're seeing that in all of its glory here with respect to these programs and the poor IT systems we use to run them. This is an easy solution. We got plenty of smart people that can fix this. The private sector couldn't survive if they had systems this bad. They'd go bankrupt. We're out of here today in Cleveland tomorrow. Tune in, please. Until then, stay safe and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.